morning and welcome to the Chicago Treasurer's Office Financial Education Webinar Series. The mission of these webinars is to provide all Chicagoans with the knowledge and skills needed to make informed financial decisions to help build wealth today for tomorrow. We would first like to thank our partners from Chicago City Colleges, Kennedy King College, our Executive Director, Kenyon R. Douglas from Workforce Equity Initiative, and the Chicago Department of Procurement. On today's session, the Department of Procurement will be leading today's webinar entitled, How to Become Certified. Under the leadership of Chief Procurement Officer Charlotte Roberts, DOP leads the City of Chicago's Certification and Compliance Authority. This workshop will help you understand the process of getting your certification for the City of Chicago's various certification programs. Throughout the presentation, feel free to post your questions in the chat, and at the end of the presentation, we will respond to your questions. We are honored to have Mr. Cordell McGarry, the Senior Certification Compliance Officer from Department of Procurement. Again, after the presentation, we will then respond to all of your questions, and we will now begin this webinar with Mr. McGarry presenting how to become certified.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for the fine introduction. We here at the Department of Procurement Services are also honored to be part of this series. So today we're going to talk about how to become certified with the City of Chicago under our business programs for small businesses. Next slide, please. So just to give you a perspective, the Department of Procurement Services, we are the contracting authority for the procurement of goods and services for all of the City of Chicago departments, as well as in some cases, some of the agencies. We do this through, again, the Department of Procurement Services. We have an Office of Contracting Equity, which is basically involved with the working with small businesses. And through this vehicle, we actually work on and manage the certification programs for small businesses. Next slide, please. So our goals today is to talk about the certification programs, the benefits of certification, basically eligibility requirements, and who qualifies for certification. We'll touch on the application process, including the required information documents, and discuss the process after applications are submitted. You will probably hear this one point, I'll mention it several times throughout the workshop, and it's to basically tell the story. And that's basically going to be my mantra for today. Next slide. So basically, our department is involved in the 6 different certification programs. The first 4 are what I call local programs, and that they're governed under the City of Chicago's ordinance, and they're called the Minority Business Enterprise Program, or MBE, the Women's Business Enterprise Program, or WBE, a program for veterans that are in business, as well as for those that are involved in business with people with disabilities. On the other side, we have 2 programs that are governed by federal regulations issued by the U.S. Department of Transportation, and they're known as the DBE program, or Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, as well as Airport Concessions Disadvantaged Business Enterprise. When I checked our log this morning, I noticed that we had roughly about 3,999 different businesses that are certified in our programs. Some of those businesses hold multiple certifications. So in looking at the scope, to give you perspective, we probably work with an average of roughly 5,000 certifications themselves throughout the City of Chicago, because some firms can hold multiple types of certifications. We'll discuss this as we go along. Next slide, please. So now we're going to touch on the benefits of certification. One of the primary benefit is that it provides visibility to the small business owner. Once you're certified, you'll be listed in a directory that's accessible to the general public and all prime contractors who are seeking to partner with you to do business. There are participation goals for our programs that are set up to try to provide, again, opportunities for minorities, women, and veterans and disadvantaged business of enterprises to participate on contract opportunities, as well as there are businesses in the private sector that also look for working with certified firms for their own products and services. So again, there are other benefits with regard to being certified itself. So next slide, please. We have a target market program. which is actually where we try to provide an exclusive opportunity for minority participants to bid on certain opportunities that we have. The benefit of this target market program is that it allows certified businesses to participate 100% in the contract opportunity, as opposed to maybe a set-aside goal that may be for other participating contracts themselves. Next slide. Qualified groups under our certification programs would fall into the following categories. For our local program and a federal program, qualifying groups would be members that are considered to be Black, Hispanic, Asian, Pacific or Asian subcontinent, Native Americans, and women. For our local programs, we also include veteran-owned businesses and also people with disabilities, businesses that are open for people with disabilities. No matter what the circumstances, though, for all of our programs, other individuals who may not fall into these categories that would like to participate and may be able to prove that they also have been subjected to social and economic disadvantage, in this country, could also petition to participate in this program, and it will be a determination made on an individual basis in that particular case. Next slide. So our requirements for certification basically are as follows. For our local programs, your business should be located within the Chicagoland region, and we define Chicagoland region as being the counties of Cook, DuPage, Kane, McHenry, Lake, or Will counties. If you have a business where your principal office is established in those areas, then you would be eligible to be considered for certification under our local programs. Under our federal programs, which would be the DBE and ACDBE programs, you can be located anywhere in Illinois. And in some cases, if you're from out of state, you could also seek to be certified in the state of Illinois as well. In any case, all businesses that are looking to participate in our programs should be at a minimum 51% owned, controlled, and managed by a minority, women, veteran, and or person with a disability for our local programs. For our DBE and ACDBE programs, we look at, again, the same category. We call it socially and economically disadvantaged. So under the determination of socially disadvantaged, we would include minorities, women, as well as our program. And economically disadvantaged, again, pertains to the net worth of the individuals as well as the size of the business itself. Next slide. So for the local programs, we do have we call a personal net worth standard, and this applies to businesses that are involved in construction. Construction being, let's say, building, doing rehabilitation, renovations, and the like. If you're operating in this particular area, then you're subject to what's called a personal net worth standard of the majority owners. That personal net worth standard is adjusted on an annual basis, and for the year 2025, it's roughly $2,872,057, and that's adjusted annually, and is based on the Consumer Price Index itself. For our federal programs, they're also a personal net worth standard that applies for all businesses that are seeking to be certified under this program, and that number is currently set at $2,047,000. And that is also, like the city's program is adjusted periodically, is done by the United States Department of Transportation. The calculation of personal net worth of the qualifying owners would take into consideration and exclude the value of your primary residence, where you reside, any retirement savings, pensions that you have, and interest in the actual firm that's seeking to be certified. For our local programs, we also exclude the value of other real estate that you also have in this endeavor. And anyway, the personal net worth is essentially the difference between what you own or your assets as opposed to your liabilities or what you owe. And that's the basic formula for computing the personal net worth that we're speaking of. Next slide. For businesses themselves, we get our programs are targeted to work with small businesses, and that definition of small business can vary depending on the type of program that you're involved in. Depending on your local program or in our federal programs, that average could be based upon 3 years, 5 years, or 7 years. For example, if you're involved in our local programs and you're involved in non-construction activities, such as maybe professional service firms, accounting, janitorial, things of that nature, your gross receipts are averaged over a 3-year period and should not exceed what we determine to be roughly $50,075,000 to constitute being a small business. This basically is, again, adjusted by the city on an annual basis, based upon, again, the local economy in the area itself. For our federal programs, that's calculated on a 5-year average, and the gross receipts of the business should not exceed what's considered to be the size standard is set by the Small Business Administration for the firm's primary line of business in that particular case. So that's kind of how that works. For the ACDBE, it's the business size standard is adjusted. It's considered to be quite high at roughly 56.42 million, and that's averaged over, again, 5 years for most firms. There are some exceptions, but they're rare in that particular case. The business, we talk about the business size standard, we talk about the gross receipts. We're actually talking about the gross receipts, annual sales that are reported on your income tax return before any cost of goods sold, things of that nature. Next slide. For our local programs, we have special consideration that's given to businesses that are involved in the supply and distribution of goods and services. We have a definition for suppliers that we look at, and we consider a supplier to be a regular dealer of goods and services, one that preferably operates a store or warehouse or other establishment in which they invest in materials, goods, and supplies that they sell from that particular inventory itself. For distributors, we're looking at firms that are involved in conjunction with a manufacturer of goods and services, where their role in working with the manufacturer is to distribute its goods and products over specified territory or region, preferably. In this relationship, we prefer that it be exclusive in that particular sense. Next slide. Another category that we look at would be called brokers. And for the purposes of our local programs, firms that are involved as brokers would not be eligible for certification in our program. We consider a broker to be a personal entity that pretty much acts as a middle person with regard to a conduit for purchasing and receiving supplies from a third-party supplier for purposes of then providing to another firm for sale. In that sense, they're pretty much serving as a conduit. They would not have an investment in the goods and services that's being sold or the relationship with the manufacturer, in that sense, to be considered for certification in our local programs. However, under the federal programs, firms that are involved as brokers could be considered to be eligible for certification. Next slide. So before we go into the online application process, I just kind of want to summarize what we're looking at. So basically what we're looking at are firms that are considered to be owned and controlled by minorities and individuals. That ownership should constitute a minimum of 51%. What I didn't mention before is that firms, in addition to that, firms are certified based upon the services that they provide. So if I'm involved in construction, again, for example, my firm is involved in construction, that's what I do. We also look for the owners, qualified owners, to have a background and experience in that type of work that's being done as also a condition for certification. So this going back to an example, if I'm in business as a plumber and I own the business, I would be expected to demonstrate to have 51% ownership in that business, but also have a background in the services that are necessary to be provided to the general public. In that sense, I have to control that service, and I control it with my level of expertise as well as my ownership interest in the company. So when we talk about the online application process, we're talking about telling the story. You should think about it from that perspective. Now, looking at the application process, it's done online with the City of Chicago. Our website is listed on the PowerPoint. It's www.chicago.mwbe.com. That would be the online portal that you would use for your application, as well once you're certified to access your own personal files, to look at your certification records and manage that from your perspective. Again, the application fee for our local programs currently is set at $250. And right now, that fee would be payable after you've submitted the application to the city and it's been accepted for review. For our federal programs, the DBE and ACDBE programs, there is no application fee, as well as with our local programs for people with disabilities. After you submit the application for our local programs, as I mentioned earlier, you will receive an email invoice, basically that says your application has been received for review. And once you pay that application fee, then it's assigned to a certification officer for review. and that fee can be paid at, I guess, several of our payment centers. I believe it's also allowed to be payable online. So when you get the invoice, you should have instructions on the invoice that would direct you into the process of how to make that payment itself. Next slide. Okay. The process of putting together the application will involve you assembling and providing documentation which you will upload during the process. Again, I emphasize it's important for the company to tell the story. It helps us in the review process, as well as give us clarity as to the type of certification that you're looking for, the services that you'll be provided, and how they are to be done. The information that we're seeking basically on our applications would be you'd identify the type of certification that you're looking for. You can also choose multiple certifications. For our local program, you can apply for the MBE, WBE, VEB, or BEPD certifications on one application. And likewise, for our federal DBE and ACDB programs, you can apply for those two certifications on one application as well. So you don't necessarily have to file 6 applications if you're seeking to be certified in all 6 categories. One should do for our local and one should do for our federal. If you're seeking to be certified under our program for business enterprises for people with disabilities, it will require what's called a Schedule G form, which you can get when you go through the online process. You can download this. This form basically provides information that will be needed to review basically the extent of your disability, and it's also verified by the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities. So that's an important form that you would need to submit with your application. If you're seeking to be certified as a veteran-owned business, we would require evidence of your discharge from the service, and that could be accomplished by providing the forms that are called DD 214 and DD 215 itself. Along with that information, you're going to then provide information regarding the business, starting with yourself. Tell that story. It's important. We want information about the employees that are involved with you, the facility that you're operating from. Even if you're operating from home, you should provide information regarding that, because we want to have evidence that you control the location that you're working from. Financial information from the business would be pertinent to determination of your business size standard, using your gross sales information and the like. Some businesses do require licensing, and we do require that information be in place prior to the application. In some cases, depending on, again, the type of work that you do, that license may also serve to qualify you in terms of having the technical expertise itself. Next slide. In addition to the information I mentioned earlier, we also, again, want to know about the owners. Tell that story, guys. It's important that you provide resumes that describe the owners and key management people that are involved in the business. The resume should provide information regarding what that person does that's relevant to the services that they provide, as well as any information that can support them having the background and expertise in the areas that they're looking to be certified in. If you've worked on contracts, let's say for services that you're providing, having evidence of those contracts can also help in establishing the involvement of the business in the areas that it's seeking to work in, as well as the owner's experience in doing that. So if you have that information, most certainly I would say include it. Other information that we'd be looking for would be driver's licenses and birth certificates or passport, proof of equity contribution to the investment, which would basically be evidence of your investment in your business. I come across a lot of applications where individuals say, well, I didn't invest anything in the business. And I tend to disagree with them from the standpoint that everybody has made some investment in the business, even if it's just the paper that you wrote your application on, or the filing fee that you may have paid to establish your business with the Secretary of State, or the laptop that you bought to provide to operate your business on. These are forms of investment, monies that you've expended in your business. I would say document that. We need to make sure that you have some skin in the game, and that's one way to do that. Business bank accounts and signatory cards. If you've established a business, we're also going to be looking to see that you've established a banking relationship where we can identify those people that have control over the business relationship for the business itself. There are cases where we have sole proprietors that may be operating out of their personal accounts. We can accept that. I would just suggest on an aside that you maybe think about maybe segregating your business and your personal affairs, having separate accounts for that, it goes a long way to helping keep track of your expenses as well as manage the business operations itself. Organizational charts, again, that describes basically the organizational structure. Who's in charge, what are the operating divisions, if there are any, and basically who or what positions are involved in that. Will go a long way to helping to understand the company. Even if you're probably the sole owner, it wouldn't hurt to have a chart that has that one individual on there. Again, it's all about perspective. And the equipment that you're working with, that you use in your operation of your business, I would provide that information as well as any loan information that you may have incurred in regards to getting your business started or having it operate itself. Let's say lines of credit for operating expenses, or maybe loans for equipment that you may have gotten. I've even seen situations where maybe an individual borrowed money to assist them in acquiring a business. So that information is also important to help us during our review. Next slide. So with regard to financial documents, I mentioned earlier, we look at business size standards, and we gross sales over a 3, 5, 7 year period, depending on the type of involvement that you're in. We do this through the review of business and individual tax returns of the owners of the business itself. For firms that are involved in our local programs that are not involved in construction, we only require 3 years of tax returns. If you're involved in construction, we ask for a few more years. We do that because we recognize that businesses that are involved in construction can have wide swings in gross sales over a period of time, and we don't necessarily want them to graduate, in 1 year only to fall back. So we try to average that over a longer period of time. So we look at 7 years for firms that are involved in construction. If you're involved with our DBE and ACDBE programs, we look at 5 years of business and personal tax returns to help us determine your business size standard. We also require information regarding income that's earned by the owners of the business and key managers. And this would be revenue or income that you receive from all sources, not just the company that you're working with in terms of seeking certification, but any and all sources that we also look at as well. In some cases, if the owner has multiple businesses, we would also need the tax returns of those other businesses, which I refer to as affiliate businesses, as well as looking at the business size standard. And of course, as I indicated earlier, we look at the personal net worth statements that are required for businesses that are involved in construction for our local program, and for our ACDBE and DBE programs, that's required for all the applications that are submitted under that program. Next slide. So after the applications are submitted, we go through what's called the intake process, whereby we review them for completeness. We will then make sure that all the essential information is there for purposes of beginning the review. If we're missing information, we will return the application to you electronically, along with a note basically explaining what it is we need to have the application be considered complete. Once that application has been received as complete, we then will, if it's a local program, we'll invoice you for the application fee. If you're not involved in our local programs, then we directly will assign it to a certification officer for review. Once you've paid your application fee, that also happens with our local applications as well. They're also assigned to an officer for review. The review process is estimated to take approximately 90 days upon receipt of the completed application and all supporting documents. So please keep that in mind. That's one reason why we want to make sure it's complete before we receive it. So once we've done that, and we will try to go through an endeavor to have the review completed during that time. The documents during that period, they're thoroughly reviewed, because we want to understand basically, again, what it is you do, how you do it, the ownership structure, and basic elements of control. So again, it's important that you tell that story. One of the things I look at sometimes when I look at applications, I go through them and I'll see a lot of areas where there may be a document that's requested and someone says not applicable, and they don't explain why. So that kind of creates a scenario whereby the reviewer may have to come back to you to ask what that information, or ask you to clarify what you mean when you say not applicable, because some things may be applicable or may be misunderstood. The process of reaching out to you and waiting for you to return can add extra time to the processing time frame we just mentioned earlier. So kind of keep that in mind. Telling that story sometimes when it might just seem like a maybe something that's silly to do could actually make a lot of sense. Give you a case in point. If a business has not been in existence for 5 years and we're asking for 5 years of tax returns, it's not appropriate just to say not applicable. I would say not applicable and then explain why. Business just started 2 years ago. Information is not available. Things like that, again, will help us in going through this process. In addition to the review process, you might have to be subject to a site visit or a virtual interview at a minimum, whereby we'll come and meet with the owners to talk about the business, get a sense for basically their involvement in the business, their background and experience in the business. In some cases, we'll come out and take pictures of the operation in that sense. For our construction applications on the local side and for our supplier applications on the local side, that is a requirement. For our DBE programs, it's mandatory that every firm has a site visit. So that's something that will be required in most cases. Next slide. So you've gone through this process. You've given us the information. We've done the site visit, and congratulations. I would expect 99.9% of you to be certified. I am optimistic that you would be. And once you're certified, guess what? There's no expiration. You're certified indefinitely until there's causes or circumstances that will no longer mandate your eligibility. We ask for all applications or all applicants, once they're certified, to submit to us on an annual basis what's called a no change affidavit in the local program. For the federal program, we refer to that same document as a declaration of eligibility affidavit. Basically, what you're saying when you file this on an annual basis is that you're basically letting us know that there's been no changes in circumstances that would cause you to no longer be eligible, such as the ownership is still the same, the business size standard did not exceed the size standard that may apply to them with regard to being a small business, or the owner has not been so successful that their personal net worth exceeds the thresholds that we mentioned earlier. If those circumstances occur, we would say congratulations, you served you reached the goal of the program, and we have best wishes for you. In some cases, though, there are businesses that change. I mean, the ownership may change. There may be other things that happen. So we do, in addition to, the no change affidavit or declaration of eligibility forms that I talked earlier, if there is a change, we do ask that you notify us within 10 business days of the change. That helps us to reevaluate the businesses from the standpoint of eligibility and continued certification itself. In some cases, again, there may be other types of changes like address changes, things like that, or minor changes. We ask that you just give us a courtesy call to let us know. You can also report certain changes using what's called an expansion application that we have. Next slide. So when we talk about expansion of services, we talk about the opportunities for businesses to grow. Because once you're certified, if certification is indefinite, we also want that certification to be beneficial to you as you grow. So as you take on, let's say, additional services, you can also add these services to your certification through what we call an expansion process. So again, going back to my example, if I'm involved in plumbing and I do this for a number of years, and I decide to also, while I'm doing this particular field, I expand to maybe cover HVAC or to cover maybe electrical type of work. And I also want to participate in those contract opportunities. I can seek an expansion of my certification to cover those other work categories. You would do this by actually talking about the expansion application, which you could actually access using the portal that we talked about earlier. Again, you're telling the story, though. No matter what it is you're doing, you're telling that story. So if I'm expanding my services, I'm not going to just say, give me this particular code that pertains to this service. I'm going to basically make an argument for it by saying that I'm now doing this particular type of work. Here's evidence of the background and skill sets that I've obtained to enable me to work proficiently in that area and control that service and the like. So again, you're telling that story and you're providing supporting documentation wherever possible. Some of that documentation can include licenses that you might need, again, for that service. Say, for example, I was a draftsman and I am certified as a draft in the area of drafting, but now I've gotten, let's say, licensed as an architect. and I want now to expand my certification to include that. I'm going to probably require and provide evidence of my licensing with the appropriate office in the state of Illinois that would be for that particular area. Any contracts, again, that I've done work in, that could be used as an illustration of the work that I'm doing. That might even help provide details as to the scope of the work that I've been involved in would help. Information like insurance that you've had to acquire, or even an updated resume that kind of documents the skills that you now obtain. All those things are important, and we're telling that story for that purpose. Next slide. Okay. This is the part that I guess I don't think that any of us would have to encounter, but let's go over it anyway, because there are reasons from time to time why applications are denied. I like when I look at the list here, I think about it from the standpoint again that, well, the story might not have been clear. So again, telling that story is important. One of the first reasons that we deny applications is that it's not substantiated or it's questionable as to really who is owning the business or who is in control of the business. We have had circumstances where we've had individuals that represent themselves to have 51% ownership of the business. When we look at the services that are being provided by the business, we don't see where that particular owner has the background and technical expertise to be able to control and manage that business. And that's an important thing that we need to look at. That also kind of goes into the unclear descriptions of the critical functions of the key owners or the officer or the manager of the business and who's responsible for what. We look at, again, for purposes of the equity investment or proof of contribution of the individual, it's not clear as to where or how they got the startup funds to actually get this business off the ground. There are rules and regulations pertaining to the investment of a business by the owners. We do expect that money to come from the resources of the owner as opposed to maybe let's say an unsecured loan that's made by an individual who wouldn't be eligible. For example, we need clarity in regards to that. Sometimes we work with businesses, owners that are involved in other businesses. If those other businesses or the other activities prevent you from being able to manage your business that's being certified, that could be a concern because, again, we look for the owners to be able to control the operations of the business. We recognize, however, that there could be circumstances where I just started a business today and I'm employed, engaged in employment because I have to feed my family, I have to sustain myself, and I just can't just walk away and just start something from scratch and expect to earn that income. That's understandable, and again, that's why you want to tell that story. We do look at and try to provide understanding to folks, for example, that are involved in businesses. Typically, a new business that's starting up, for example, could very well operate during the times when the owner is not engaged at their other place of employment, such as the fact that I work 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and on the weekends I'm engaged in my business. As long as you're engaged in the business all the while it's running, there would not be an issue. However, there have been circumstances where that's not been the case. We need you to kind of help us to tell that story so we can help understand that. For our local programs, the company needs to be located in one of the 6 county regions that was mentioned earlier. And what we mean by the company, we mean the principal office of the company, where the decisions are being made, where the policies are being set, where the operation emanates from. So that's important, as opposed to maybe having a branch within, let's say, the Chicagoland area. Your principal business needs to be here. Our local programs were actually designed, I like to think, to support the growth of small businesses here in the city. So that's one reason why I think that local aspect is kind of important we look at here. During the course of review, when we're looking at the information, from time to time, we might need you to provide additional information that helps to clarify maybe a point that you're looking at. So from time to time, we might ask you to provide additional information or to clarify something that was said in the application. We call this a process whereby we're sending out what's called a request for information. And typically what we'll do in these circumstances, we'll send you a letter or a note, email, communication that basically reaches out to you to explain the information that we need in order to continue our review. We will, in most cases, send the first notice out and request that you respond within 15 days. In the event that we don't hear from you or we receive a partial request to our answer to our request, then we will follow up with a second notice. which could be for an additional 15 days. In the event that you respond within that period of time, no harm, no foul, we continue to review. But in the event that we've reached out to you on several instances, and let's say within the 30 days you've not responded or given us what we need, then that could result in the firm either having an application closed or, in the case of the federal program, actually denied due to what's called non-cooperation. So in the event that we reach out to you, please respond. If you need additional time to respond, just communicate with us. Let us know. It's the non-communication that could cause this application to no longer be considered for review. And if you think about it, this process, the non-response or the partial response, can add to the certification processing time. Just the 30-day period that I'm talking about here, added on to a 90-day period, could result in 120 days for the application to be processed. So again, it's important that you reach out to us as soon as possible with regard to any requests that we make. We've received information that we've gotten throughout the process where the required documents that we asked for were not attached, or there was no explanation given as to why the documents are unavailable, or again, someone says not applicable on an application and we don't know why, and we are now trying to figure out what's going on. Tell that story. That's important. Finally, the required tax returns that we normally look for, depending on the type of program. Again, it could be 3 years, 5 years, or 7 years. They were not submitted, required that they all be signed, mind you. It's important that we do that, but they weren't submitted and there was no explanation given. So those are basically the reasons why firms can be denied or applications can be delayed in this processing. So again, we want to work with you to resolve that and to work with that. During the application process, if you have any questions, you can always also contact our office and we'll try our best to provide clarity or work with you to resolve those matters. Next slide. So that kind of brings us to the end of this part of the program. So kind of just summarizing it again, certification, we have 6 different programs that are available to small businesses for certification. We have 4 of them which are governed by local ordinance, 2 that are governed by federal ordinance. They're all designed to act as tools for the small business to assist them in participating in opportunities that at one time they weren't even engaged in or allowed to participate in. So we want to make sure that we engage you. We want to make sure that you participate. And we try to do that by offering the array of programs themselves. They all require controlling ownership by the eligible individuals, be it a minority and or woman, or a veteran or a person with disabilities. They have to have at least 51% or more control of the business. They should have a background and expertise in the areas of that they're providing services in. If I'm an architect, I should be able to demonstrate that I have a background in architecture, that I can control that type of work. So that's important. Businesses are also considered based upon their status as being considered a small business. And as we discussed in our workshop here, that can vary based upon the type of program. So I would encourage you to go to our webpage to kind of look at the different categories of certification and basically what we might be looking for. And you can also call our office with regard to that. What I didn't mention, though I'll mention it now, is that one of the primary benefits of certification is that we have relationships with other agencies that also do certification. And in some cases, we have reciprocity. So like, for example, with the County of Cook or Cook County, they have a local program for minority and women-owned businesses. Our relationship with the county is such that if you're certified with the county as an MBE or WBE, you're also considered certified with the city of Chicago. We accept their certifications with regard to procurement opportunities at the city, and they accept our certification with regard to procurement opportunities at the county itself. On our federal programs, we have reciprocity for other agencies in the state of Illinois that also have DBE and ACDBE programs, such as the Illinois Department of Transportation, Chicago Transit Authority, Metro Pace Rail and Pace Bus Services. Altogether, those 5 agencies comprise what's called to be the Illinois Certification Program for the DBE and ACDBE certifications. Once you're certified as a DBE or ACDBE with any of those organizations, you're also certified and considered for participation in contract opportunities with those agencies as well. As an example, I think CTA will be embarking upon an extension of the Red Line service. They'll be looking for DBEs to participate along with that. If you're certified with the city as a DBE, that's an opportunity for you. So you can reach out to them and also participate in that as well. So the program does have a benefit that kind of reaches out beyond just the city itself. We also have relationships with other agencies such as the Chicago Minority Supplier Development Council and the Women's Business Development Center, who also have certification programs which are more utilized in the private sector. If you're certified with any of those agencies, you can apply to the city for certification on an expedited basis, where we take into consideration the certification with that agency and expediting your certification with the city of Chicago. So again, these are also benefits that are available to small businesses as well. We also have relationships with other related agencies, such as the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, or let's say the Chicago Public Library, or the Board of Education. The Board of Education and the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, they have procurement departments, so they're looking to buy goods and services. And they also recognize the city's certification programs for purposes of participating in those opportunities as well. So I know I've kind of gone over this, but I just want to make sure that you see the value of the certification. It's an important tool that could be used in growing your business. While it's not a guarantee of a contract, most certainly it helps you get in the door once that opportunity is present. So again, telling that story is important. I thank you guys for allowing me to talk to you about the programs. And if there are any questions, I'm here to answer or try to provide information. Okay. Any questions?
You all can go to www.chicagocitytreasurer.com. This presentation will live on our website, as well as you can go to our YouTube page. And yes, we are opening the floor for questions. So please, if you have any questions, please add them to the chat, and Mr. McGarry will respond. Mr. McGarry, so while we are getting those questions, one of the questions that came in during our first presentation was regarding the process of submitting for one of the certifications. What would you say is one of the greatest barriers for people that you all have run into as they are applying for different certifications? What is one thing that you see that constantly occurs while people are applying?
I think to answer that question, we'll probably refer more to perhaps not having a story about the business itself, or not as clearly as one can. The application, most certainly, when you look at it, it can probably look to be overwhelming, but really it's not. It's just asking for information that we need to make a determination. And the application form, unfortunately, is a one-size-fit-all type of application. So it may not necessarily have the same meaning to a person that's brand new to a business environment as opposed to one that's been around for a while. And again, for those that have not been around for a while, it's important for them to kind of talk about the story, for example, what it is they do, how they do it, provide as much information as possible. One of the barriers that I see is that I may get incomplete information that even after we've received the application, we find ourselves having to go back to get resolved. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Another question as we were waiting, we'll go ahead and insert that question.
Okay. I see one that says, does credit matter applying for contracts? The bidding process of applying for a contract is determined at the time of the bid. So there's like bid documents that you may receive that talk about the opportunity. I don't think I've seen instances where they require a certain credit standard in applying for submitting the bid. For purposes of certification, having credit does not matter. I mean, I'm not evaluating your creditability with regard to seeking certification. I'm simply trying to determine whether or not you have a business that's been established and whether or not you're the owner and you have the background and expertise to be able to control this operation. So I wouldn't consider credit as part of that process. Okay.
So there was a question about missing the first session. Just know that these are just educational sessions to provide information. The process and the steps, as Mr. McGarry mentioned, all have to do with Department of Procurement. This platform is just being leveraged to provide information. So if you missed the first virtual workshop that we hosted, you can feel free to go to our website, and they'll load that up, City Treasurer's website, on the in the webinar. You'll see that shortly, and you can go back and view it. But as it relates to qualifying for certification, as Mr. McGarry said, they will walk you through. The Department of Procurement is in charge of that process, and will make sure that you all get the certification. Not make sure that you get the certification, and walk you through that process.
And if I could add too, if you have questions regarding certification, you can reach us directly. Our number is 312-744-4900. When you get to the 4900, you're going to be asked to choose an option. Option 1 will direct you to a certification officer who's available to answer any questions you might have to assist you in the process.
All right, Mr. McGarry, we have another question in regards to the renewal process and the frequency. Is there a renewal process? What is the frequency? And are there any additional fees?
Okay. So as I indicated earlier, there is no expiration to certification. So once you certify, you are certified what I call indefinitely. But you are asked to, on an annual basis, check in with our office, and you do that by submitting what's called an affidavit of no change, or no change affidavit for our local programs. For our federal programs, that same process is referred to as a declaration of eligibility, whereby you'll go online at your scheduled anniversary date. We will give you an anniversary date. You'll go in and you'll provide information that indicates that there's been no changes of circumstances that would affect your eligibility for certification. That's all you need to do. Now, in the event that you, again, have some changes in your organizational structure, say you add on ownership, members of ownership, or you add other things that the business may be involved in that you want to have considered for certification, you will do that by reaching out to us and completing what's called an expansion form, so you can grow the certification along with that. So I see a question here. What about if our business is in the startup phase? What I consider, startup businesses are eligible for consideration of certification. You need to be in business. If I'm in the process of, let's say, organizing my business, I haven't filed my paperwork yet with the Secretary of State, or I haven't done any of that, then there's no business to certify. So at a minimum, you at least need to get the business started. In that sense, you could be considered for certification. Again, though, because you don't have the track record that maybe a business has been around for 7, 8, 10 years have, it's important that you kind of tell the story about this business. And when you deal with most banks, for example, as a startup, many of them will ask you to provide what's called maybe a business plan. That business plan is a universal document that a bank may ask for to consider financing, but we would also look at as well as an aid in telling the story about your business. So what it is you do, how you do it, what's your plans for operating, all those things are important for us to understand, not only what it is the business is trying to do, but the skills and strengths of the owner and being able to control that service. So again, tell a story, tell a story, tell a story.
All right. And so again, we are grateful, we are thankful. Mr. McGarry, we appreciate you and the Department of Procurement for partnering with us in providing this phenomenal workshop. As we conclude, don't forget to save the date for Saturday, October 4th at UIC, as we celebrate 5 years of empowering Chicago's at our annual BWTT Summit. Please take a second to look in the chat box, and you will see a link to complete our survey. We value your feedback. Again, thank you to our partners from City Colleges of Chicago, Kennedy King College, and the City of Chicago Department of Procurement. Be sure to follow us at www.chicago-citytreasurer.com for more information about upcoming webinars and our in-person workshops. Thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful day.
Chicago, it's time to build wealth. Get ready for the 5th annual Building Wealth Today for Tomorrow Financial Empowerment Summit. Returning Saturday, October 4th to the UIC Forum. Gain the tools you need for financial success with expert-led workshops on financial planning, home ownership, investing and entrepreneurship, money management, and more. Hear wealth wisdom from inspiring celebrity keynotes. Are you ready to transform your financial future? Register for free at chicagocitytreasurer.com/BWTT. One day, one location, endless opportunities. See you October 4th at BWTT. Mark your calendar and register today.